Trying to cover a lot of topics. Don't want to overwhelm anybody, but want to make sure we get a lot of the information out. This PowerPoint presentation will be available to you at a later point, so don't feel like you have to get every single thing down as we kind of go along. But you're obviously welcome to take notes. I don't want this necessarily to be something where I'm just up here talking at you guys. At some point, we can pause and ask questions. And this year we also brought some young men here to talk about their experiences. We felt that was important. So a little bit different than prior years, but nonetheless, a little bit about Teddy's obviously here is our director of soccer. A lot of experience and been around the game for many years and seen a lot of players move on from the club. And then myself, a little bit about myself. I won't go into a lot of this stuff, but I've been doing college since 2010, so for about 15 years now. I've done every level of college except for Division II. But I'm still learning in terms of the recruitment process. Certainly in today's world, a lot of new stuff happening. So I don't know everything. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know everything. There's a lot of stuff that's over my head at the moment, but I'm trying to understand it so that I can educate our families here in the club. So with all that being said, we're going to change the order a little bit in terms of how we want to go about this, but I want to kind of skim through some of the stuff that I think is basic, and then hopefully expand on some of the more important items as we kind of get later on. One of the things that's extremely important for you guys to understand, and I say this every year, and I say this, and I'll continue to say it, is obviously, parents and families are welcome into this conversation because you guys are an important part of the process, certainly, and you guys have a lot of experiences that you can advise your young men and young sons in terms of the process, and you need to be involved. But ultimately, it's you guys as individuals, as young men, that need to drive your own recruitment process. So I'm glad a lot of you are here because it's your journey, it's your process, and you really need to own it to the best of your ability. But we'll start off in terms of what makes sense in terms of identifying your right college. I've listed a bunch of criteria. A lot of these things are probably very simple when you read them, make sense. What's important that you take away from this slide is you need to do research on your own in terms of deciding what's important to you. Some things may be more important to one individual as opposed to the other, and you need to kind of categorize those and rank those to the best of your ability, because that's ultimately what's going to allow you to have the best experience possible when you get to that university, when you get to that school. So these are things that I think are very important to consider and think about. Some of them may not be as important to you, which is totally understandable, but I think you need to invest time and energy in terms of figuring out what things are important. Some of these things, you probably physically need to get onto a campus and really kind of see for yourself. Other things maybe as simple as jumping on a computer and doing a little bit of research and really understanding what that really entails. But ultimately, again, there's going to be some time needed from yourself to figure out what is important, what's not important. Time invested into getting onto a college campus and walking the campus and seeing the environment for yourself. Because ultimately, I think it's very difficult to make decisions unless you actually see what you're getting yourself into and the environment that you're going to be in. So, for example, one of the things that we always recommend is if you go and visit a campus, as an example, and if your intentions are, I want to get out of California, or I want to get out of the West Coast, I want to go to the East Coast. Great. We laugh, it's kind of funny, but we always advise people to, go and visit that campus in the wintertime. Don't go and visit during the summer, because the climates are obviously dramatically different. Those are things you need to think about in the process when you're going and doing your research, as an example. So, anywho, I don't want to necessarily go through the entire list of things, but I think there's a lot of things that are important And the one things I will touch upon real quickly is like the soccer aspect. There's obviously academic pieces and size of the schools and in-state versus out-state tuition kind of affects prices, which ultimately that's related to cost, which I think is obviously a part where your families and your parents are going to be heavily involved in terms of decision making. But there's an aspect in terms of like soccer and level of play and soccer structure, environment, and facilities and all those things that I think that's where a lot of young men in your guys' shoes fail in the recruitment process. They don't put a lot of time and energy into that aspect. I think you guys do a good job overall in terms of understanding like, okay, education, what's important. You do a lot of research and time, but there's an aspect of like investing in terms of the soccer aspect that I think is also important as well. That shouldn't be discounted. And a lot of that again is going and watching the games, maybe watching a training, what I call assessing the market in terms of where people are committing, what level am I playing at currently in the club, have I gone to an ID camp and can I assess myself against other prospects that are also interested in that school. Again, that takes time and energy, but I think that's the one thing that a lot of young men don't do. You have assumptions that, okay, the school is great, I can play there, but you never watched the game as an example, or never gone physically to watch that team play. And it's hard because you have to take time to do that, and that's probably why people necessarily don't do that. It's because it takes time, you know. It takes time to watch a game, it takes time to go in person, and it takes time to do that over, you probably need to assess that and evaluate that over a couple of different options. So I would just highly, highly encourage that you guys in the room try to take the time to really assess that aspect of it. Because ultimately, if you want to be a soccer player at the next level, then a lot of the time you're going to spend there is that aspect. With that being said though, one of the things we always recommend is like this aspect and notion of, okay, if I wasn't playing soccer there, would I still go to that university? So I think a lot of young men take advantage and do a good job of the first aspect, but I also think on the flip side, there's not a lot in between. On the flip side, a lot of young men only think about the soccer aspect. They don't think, it is going crazy right now, I'm not sure what it's happening. I'm gonna stop playing with that. They don't think necessarily about all the other options or factors that maybe are important. They just think soccer, they just think dollars. That's what influences their decision, which I'll go into later, kind of affects your overall experience. So I would encourage to try to consider as many factors as possible, because overall I think whatever is important to you will affect your overall experience. So you want to check as many boxes as possible. Another way to think about it and look at it is, where do I not want to go, which will kind of allow you to think about the process. And if you can figure out where you don't want to go, then there's certainly probably some other similar places that maybe you can also cross off your list as well. That will kind of narrow your focus. So why are we starting in that aspect? There's an overall process that you guys need to think about in terms of, okay, whatever grade level you're at. I'm sure there's a balance in terms of where every individual in this room is at. In the club, we have resources in terms of documents, in-play metrics that give greater detail in terms of what you see on this slide here, in terms of steps that you should be thinking about. But I try to give a basic structure from 9th grade all the way up to senior, 12th grade. But what's important, you need to have a plan academically, you need to be good students. Ultimately, the best grades you can possibly get is going to allow you to pursue as many universities as possible. And just like anything in life, you need to have a plan to be able to execute that. Unless you're super, super talented and just, school comes easy to you, you need to have a plan. And so I highly advise every year that each and every one of you go and see your high school counselors, make sure you're on track to graduate, make sure you're meeting the requirements for NC2A, and then obviously if you're very specific in terms of universities that you want to pursue, then there's probably certain courses that you need to satisfy in that regard. But there needs to be a plan in place, and the sooner you get in, create and develop that plan, the better. I believe it's never too early to start the recruitment process, and that starts with researching what's important to you. I don't think you can start too early with the research process. So any ninth graders in here, I would encourage you to just when you have spare time, to start thinking about that and poking around and figuring out what may be important to you. 10th and 11th grade is really, really important. That's the heart of where everything is, going to drive your process. You need to go back and review your academic plan. You need to start going onto campuses and visiting places. I think in the sophomore year, that's when you can start the recruitment process. What does that mean exactly? You can contact people, and I'll get into the recruiting rules a little bit later. But there's nothing stopping you from actually reaching out and communicating with programs and with coaches and schools. I tell people not to spend a lot of time in that in the freshman year. Because you're not really going to get anything back from that. 10th grade is when you can, start to do a little bit of that. I think it's good practice. I put ID camps there. I think that's when I think ID camps are important. I think that's when you can start to at least get your feet wet with that aspect of the recruitment process. I don't think you need to do a ton of them, but I think it's good to at least position yourself in an environment where you're competing against other prospects that are also interested in universities, and I think it's a good experience overall. But periodically I send information out on Play Metrics about different aspects of the college recruitment process. One of them is how to think about ID camps. Some of you probably received that in the past. Hopefully that's not new information, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. But 10th and 11th grade, that's when your grades are like the most important. So again, you want to stay on track on that, and you really need to start. I write the key word there, being proactive. Again, it's being proactive and driving your own process. If you're going to sit around and wait for inquiries and interest from coaches, there's a very slim population that can afford that opportunity. So I think every individual in this room really needs to drive their own process and stay persistent and stay consistent with how they're reaching out and doing their research to find the best fit. ID camps I put in there because you can start to narrow your focus in terms of like where you maybe potentially want to go, and that will allow you to decide what ID camps maybe to go to in that regard. And then obviously senior year is when everything comes together. You need to start applying to universities. You obviously need to satisfy and complete all your requirements. I put FAFSA in there because that's when you can apply for financial aid. That's also one of the things I send out in terms of the college prep group, information on FAFSA, how to apply for financial aid. That's when you ultimately do that process. And then you obviously need to make, for some it might be a very easy decision, for others it may be difficult decisions. Overall though, I think it should be a process that you should enjoy. It shouldn't be stressful. I know it's more challenging these days, which I'll get to later, but I think you should try to enjoy the process. You have enough on your plate as a senior already to be stressed about. So with those two slides, wanted to introduce those aspects and give these young men here an opportunity of players, prospects in the club that have gone through the recruitment process. We tried to pick different examples of guys that chose one school versus the other and how they got to that certain decision making. So we have Ben and Tiago here, both seniors, class of 2025, both on our boys ECNL 2017. Both have been in the club since 2015, which is a very long time. I recall coaching them when they were little guys. I'm sure these guys do as well. Been recently, December, Rose Holman Institute of Technology, which is a Division III school in Indiana. Tiago recently, CSUDH, California State University, Dominguez Hills, Division II school, close to here, less than an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these guys an opportunity to kind of speak about their process, so you can hear it straight from their perspective, and then also give you guys and parents in the room an opportunity to maybe ask some questions that might be helpful for you in terms of your process, and then we'll get back to the rest of the presentation. So I don't know who necessarily wants to go first, but I think to start off, I'm just going to have them kind of describe their overall process and maybe why they ended up picking, those schools that they decided on. Do I need to change that?
Just hold it if you want, Cale.
Hmm?
Just hold it, shut up.
So, to start off basically, I committed to California State Dominguez Hills. I'll just basically start off with why I chose the program. I did have a couple other options, but California State Dominguez Hills stood out to me because of the coaching staff and also the roster situation. As a goalkeeper, it's very difficult to go into a program and, compete to get minutes early on. Something that the coaches told me was that I'd have the opportunity to compete for minutes early as my freshman, sophomore year. As far as the coaching staff, something that really stood out to me was the fact that they had 3 goalkeeper coaches on the coaching staff, which is really big for my development. Just another thing that you guys should look into is when you're getting into a school is coaching staff and the roster. Those are 2 really important things. As far as when I started my process, I really didn't know what I was going to do freshman year. If I was going to attempt to really pursue college soccer. Sophomore year, I really started to go to ID camps and send those emails out. By junior year, I think I received 2 Division III offers and just a lot of emailing back and forth, going to ID camps. And then by my senior year, it was I had a good amount of offers on the tray. It was more of just trying to narrow down what options or what program really stood out to me. One thing I think I could go back and change would be going to ID camps outside of state, because I did commit to a school that was literally 5 minutes from my house. Really, really close to my house. I didn't really have a preference, but at the end of the day, I was open for anything really. So, yeah, if I did have to go back and change something, I would go to ID camps out of state, because I did have some options, or not options, but I would say interests outside of state, but I just didn't really pursue them outside of state.
Terry, let me ask you a question. Where did you get a lot of interest from schools? Was it local games that we played in league? Was it showcases like Arizona, South Carolina? And so you guys know, Tiago also got some interest from Division I schools, particularly Villanova, which is a big Division I school. But he chose Dominguez for different reasons. But what were some of the showcases that you got seen, and then what kind of steps you took before you went to the showcases?
Yeah, I think showcases are a massive part in this recruiting process. It's a good chance, when you go back east to showcases, to showcase yourself to schools there, because a lot of the schools don't really come here. So when you do go there, I would send probably around 30 emails, a lot of emails out. Just before, and then also a follow-up email. In those emails, I would include basically my resume, graduation year, grade point average, and my highlight video. I think a big part of that was the highlight video. I really put a lot of effort into that, and I think I did a really good job with that, and that's really what helped me a lot with that whole process was the highlight video.
Mind
Also-
you, Tiago has like 1 million followers on Instagram or something like that. Every kid knows him in Southern California. Go ahead, Tiago.
Another thing was, what were we gonna say now? Yeah, and then the follow-up email, just, if I did see the coach out there, also I would try to go talk to the coach. You know, try to build a relationship, because with schools back east, it's very hard to build a relationship with them, because they are so far from, you know, where we're from. Yeah.
Okay.
I think my recruitment process, I started a little bit too late. I started mainly like end of my sophomore year. That's when I started researching like a lot of the universities and like academically. But for the soccer aspect, I didn't start like emailing schools and coaches till going into junior year, like the surf cup, like right before you start school, and then the showcases that year. I think I probably would only send like 10 emails max per event. I don't think I worked hard enough for it, but those showcases is where I got to play more. For our league games, I'm not someone who plays 100% of the minutes. I don't start all the time, especially like these past couple of years, like the first half of the season, I didn't see much of the field. So the showcases were really big for me, because that's where I had to go out and perform. And that's where junior year at South Carolina, I played a couple good games, and I got like some interest from schools that I didn't even email. So like Navy, there's a couple D2 and then a D3 school. They just emailed me off the performance because I played well, and you know, playing for Pats, you generally draw a lot of eyes just in general, because we're a pretty big club. A lot of people know Teddy, a lot of people know Cale and everything. So, and we have very good teams, so you draw a lot more attention than just a lot of other teams. But then going into my senior year this summer, I went to 2 ID camps, one at Colorado School of Mines, which was very high on my list, and then another one at Missouri S&T, which is a similar type of school in Missouri. And I had a great time because both those schools obviously outstate, like Cale said. And for Missouri, that was their very first time watching me. And for Colorado, that may have been their, I think, only 3rd time watching me. So going to those ID camps for out-of-state schools are like very important, because they have to be totally confident in the player that they pick. So those were good experiences, because I got to go on campus, see what it was like. And then I went on 2 visits this past year, one in October and one in September, both D3 schools. Those were also really good because you got to meet the team, you really got to see the coaches, because all I had was just like conversations on the phone with the coaches. But the visits were very helpful because you could see what it's like there, see if you can envision yourself going there. And obviously I got to hang out with the team, have lunch with them, see how they play and everything, like Coach said. And I think that was a big factor in what helped me choose Rose-Hulman, just because I got to see what the campus was like. I liked that it was a little bit smaller, and that there was a small like student to professor size, because it's a good school academically, and I know that the next level of college is going to be a lot more challenging than high school. And then I got my offer for that school after South Carolina, after he saw me play. But for the out-of-state schools, it's important with like your highlight video that is showing what you are very good at. And then also, if you get further into the recruitment process, I send them just like a couple of games where it's like my every single touch. So like, even if I play to the other team or anything, it's important to like show him what you do like throughout the whole game, not just what you're showcasing as your best. But throughout the whole process, I only got, I think, 3 offers. But going into my senior year, I kind of narrowed it down to like my top 5 schools. And I chose Rose-Hulman just because I like the location. It's a lot closer to my family. All my family's in Kansas City, and it's really good academically, and that's what I wanted to be an engineer. So they're very good at that, and yeah.
Any questions, guys, from you, or any personal questions you want to know, or?
was one thing you think that you could have done different when you went to those ID camps?
When I went to those ID camps, obviously you want to make sure that, like, out of state, I had to email them, let them know that I was going to be there, because you have to let them know so that they could be watching you. But you have to be like really active. You have to like draw attention, and you really have to prepare yourself mentally and physically. You got to eat good. You have to go out there and perform, because, like I said, when I went to the ID camp for Colorado School of Mines, that's the second time seeing me. The one at Missouri, that's his very first time seeing me play. So you have to make like a really good first impression.
Yeah, to pick up on that one, I would say, I think I did a really good job at like ID camps, just like building a relationship with the coach. I think that's huge, honestly, is building a relationship. So they not only know you as a player, but as a person, because that's a big part of the recruiting process, is like, building a relationship. Because at the end of the day, they're not recruiting a player, they're recruiting a person, and who you are as a player, or I mean as a person, reflects who you are as a player. What you're doing outside the field, it's really big. So
Something to add, guys, too, so you understand, you can actually, at the D2 level, I'm not sure about the D3, just D2, you can actually get invited to their session. So like you basically go to their training session in the spring. I think Tiago just went maybe a month ago, and he trained with their team in the spring. Like literally a training session. So you're training with the individuals that he's going to be playing with, or be judged by, or judged with other players. So the coach sees them, talks to them, has a personal relationship with them. So there's a lot of things that go into that, which benefits D2 schools. At D1 and D3, you cannot do that, right? So it's not that personable. At the D2 level, it becomes very personable to get to know the team. And Ben's talking about division. When he went, he got to hang out with the group, like lunch, and I think you stayed the night there, right? You stayed the whole weekend, you got to hang out with the group. He never trained with that particular group of the team. At Division II, what Tiago did was the opposite. He got to train with that team. I think you had a question?
Yeah, Tiago, how many emails did you send before you ended up getting recruited to Council Dominguez? Like, what's a rough number?
yeah.
To just Dominguez or overall?
Oh, yeah. Like to like,
I know you just committed there, right?
yeah. So like, you're talking like a range of schools, or like just in
Okay, a range of schools.
over 100. Like, I probably sent an email to almost every school, honestly. Yeah.
I think it's important, guys, to understand, and we've had kids, these guys have had plan A, plan B, plan C. There's a lot of us that just have a plan A, and that's it. And they throw all their eggs in one basket, and they're like, well, I'm going to go D1, and it's D1 or bust. And then you find out it's not there, and then it's almost too late for a plan B and plan C, right? So it's really important to cast a wider net of schools and not just go to Top Drawer Soccer and pick the top 10 that you see, right? You got to make sure that's a right fit for you. Do your research, school size, major always changes, but there's a lot of important aspects going into their decision specifically. Any other questions?
For Tiago, for your new goalkeeper, for your highlight videos, I know Huddle it doesn't show the goalkeeper as well as it does the field players. Did you do your own like private videos, like did your parents record or get professional, or it was all Huddle?
Okay, yeah. So, like I have an Instagram account, right? So for that, it's more of we had a videographer for high school.
Mm-hmm.
That obviously Instagram does help. Social media does help, because like almost every coach has social media. They see what you're posting.
Mm-hmm.
So I did more on the professional side of the video for that. As far as my highlight video, I did strictly Huddle. I wanted to stick to like that Vito Huddle kind of quality. I didn't really have too much of a problem with like perspective on it. But like kind of things I included in it was like I sectored it out. I made sure it had like distribution, set pieces, commanding my blocks. I think it was 1v1 shot stopping situations. Yeah, just kind of like those are the big three I would say include. And then at the start of the video, obviously, I would say start with the shot stopping 1v1 section, just so you catch the attention of the coach. Because at the end of the day, recruiting goalkeeper, it's kind of what sticks out.
Thank you.
From a social media aspect, guys, because that's been over the last how many years, obviously that's blown up. It's also a blessing and a curse, right? What I mean by a blessing, yeah, they see all your highlights and everything, but they can also see the other stuff you post, right? So be careful when you do post stuff like that or certain things. See a lot of you guys smiling over there, yeah? So be careful on what you guys do post, because that stuff matters. It really does. They check that stuff out. They know everything. It's not the coach that checks it. It's the assistant to assistant to assistant that's his job to look at stuff like that. So be careful on what you post, how, why, when, right? It's really, really important.
Yes.
Good? Awesome.
I also,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
I also want to add one thing. Cale and Teddy, they're a big help. If like a school's not emailing you back, like Rose Holman initially, I sent them an email maybe end of my junior year. They didn't respond to me till like the middle of my senior year, or a little bit like the summer of my senior year. But that's because I asked Teddy and Cale to like reach out to them, and they didn't like see the email initially or something. But they're a big help, because Teddy, he knows so many people. He's been doing this for forever. He's good at UCLA and all that. And Cale, he's obviously a coach. Matt's a coach, and they're just a really big help.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. Like, a lot of the Division I schools, like, they're receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. Like, some schools, I think it was like Nova, Lafayette maybe, and then UMass Lowell. Those were probably, I had a phone call with UMass Lowell. I thought it went great. Coach never got back to me. I had Teddy call them. They just weren't interested in me anymore. Villanova sent emails, didn't get a reply back. But I had Teddy reach out to them for me, and it turns out they were super interested in me. Just at the end of the day, I chose Mingus. So yeah, but they are like seriously some of the best connections to get to college coaches around. So definitely utilize that. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. It's up to you guys.
So yeah, how can we summarize what Thiago and Ben shared, what you see on the slide? A couple of things, start as early as possible, okay? And it's never too late to start the process wherever you are in terms of freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Get the best grades that you can possibly get to give yourself as many options as possible. Be proactive, be consistent. You guys heard, okay, straight from the source in terms of the amount of work that the recruitment process requires, okay, if you want to get any sort of results. Your objective is to try to find the best fit that you can possibly find. And hopefully all the hard work will pay off. Goalkeeping, extremely difficult situation. There's one on the field, normally 3, maybe 4. Some people carry more, but really hard to find a roster spot in terms of being a goalkeeper. Ben's situation, very specific major in terms of wanting to study, so that eliminates a lot of options. That's helpful because now you can narrow your focus, but also kind of limits you as well in terms of what's potentially available. So, so credit to these guys for putting in the work and the effort, and that's our job is to help and assist and advise. So, but the credit goes to these guys to ultimately there's talent as well. So they have to have talents in terms of drawing interest from coaches. So that's completely on them. So so moving on. I don't know. I'm still doing that thing, but moving on to the next part. Okay. There's a conversation in terms of like overall what's available to you. There's NC2A, there's NAIA, there's junior college. I'll go briefly through it because hopefully this is information that you guys kind of already know. There's a couple slides I have like in red ink because that's like stuff that you should be aware of, and I'll explain why. But within the NC2A umbrella, there's D1, D2, D3. The number of programs is changing constantly. This is, I think, the latest information that I looked up today in terms of the amount of programs. Your biggest is going to be Division III across the country. NAI is a separate entity, okay, that has different rules, and then obviously junior college. And then within those divisions, there's the amount of scholarships that those programs can offer. At the moment, it says 9.9. At the moment, it says 9.9. I'll get into that a little bit later in terms of what everybody maybe has heard or read about what's called the house settlement. But there's also something called NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. That's separate from athletic scholarship that maybe you can get. But ultimately, the number of programs and the divisions, what's the difference? Basically, it boils down to enrollment sizes of schools. So as you go from Division I down, like the enrollment sizes start getting a little bit smaller. Division III schools enrollment sizes average, NAI same thing, about 1,500 students. So that's kind of like the differences apart from the athletic scholarships. There's different rules within the different divisions. NAIA has very limited rules. Within NC2A, there's different rules. So Division III example, no athletic scholarships. Division II, one of the things like Teddy mentioned, is the only place up inside the NC2A umbrella that you can go and train with the program. You cannot do that at D1, D3. I just learned this weekend from a Division II coach. They're trying to implement this rule where as a freshman you can participate in less than 30% of your games in a season, and that season's not going to count against you. What a wonderful tool to have at that level. So I don't know if it's going to pass or when it's going to pass, but according to him, it sounds very likely. That doesn't exist in other levels. So those things, my job is to try to educate and hopefully, keep tabs on those things as they develop. Junior college, there's 3 different entities within the country. There's something called NJCAA. There's something called the CCCAA, which is everything in California, and then there's something called the NWAC, which is everything up in the Northwest. The CCCAA is the only junior college association that doesn't offer athletic scholarships. But anywho, ultimately, if you're probably going to a junior college, the costs are very affordable, and a lot of the schools are offering to cover tuition, anyways. So anywho, that's kind of like how overall college athletics breaks down amongst the different entities. So obviously, a lot of people's eyes gravitate toward Division I. Based upon the previous slide, based upon some of the conversations you guys heard, overall it's about fit. It's not necessarily about like playing at the highest level, but ultimately the difference in between levels is generally the higher level is Division I, and it kind of goes down a little bit as you go. But there's good soccer at all levels. There's very good Division II programs that can beat Division I programs. The emphasis should always be on finding the best fit possible, and I'll go into a little bit about like Division I and opportunities there and a little bit later in the presentation. But your objective should be to find the best possible fit as possible. NAIA, I mentioned last year, is more faith-based institutions, so that's something to be mindful of. Most of your Division III NAIA schools are private schools. What else can I share?
What are some of the local NAI schools that, Vanguard used to be one, but
Vanguard used to be, a lot of the NAI schools locally are moved to Division II. You still have like, Hope International is kind of probably the closest one I can think off the top of my head, as an example. So, SOCA is another one that's Orange County, as an example. So, but again, different rules at every place. There's level of play, but ultimately what the objective is defined is the best fit. So, recruiting rules, I'm gonna try to go through this as quickly as possible because this is not fun stuff, but it's just stuff you need to be aware of. Nothing before June 15 after the sophomore year. The only thing coaches can send is anything that's not related to recruiting. Okay, that's at the Division 1 and 2 level. Division 3 NAI, no restrictions there. So you won't. That's when I started in terms of the checklist and talked about like sending out emails. That's why I recommend not doing too much work in the freshman year because you're not going to get anything back until that June 15 day after the sophomore year, anyways. But I still recommend going through the process and reaching out. There's nothing stopping you guys from reaching out to programs. They just can't respond back with anything recruiting related. All they can really send is back is camp information. So that should be like staple number one. Most of you guys should know that already, hopefully. There's no recruiting conversations at camps prior to June 15 after the sophomore year. They can speak to you and coach you and engage with you, but they can't tell you like, I really like you at the camp. Don't need to worry necessarily about that too much. No official visits prior to August 1 before the junior year. June 15 for Division 2, January 1, Division 3. Unofficial visits prior to August 1 before the junior year cannot involve college coaches. There's no restrictions for D2, D3. Unofficial visit versus official visit. Official visit means it's just financed by that school, by that program. If there's any dollar amount involved in terms of just even simply paying for parking, then that's considered an official visit. There's more steps to be required. If somebody offers you an official visit, they probably have pretty strong interest in you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that is going to like lead to an opportunity, but it generally shows interest. With that being said, we at UCI we do a ton of unofficial visits of guys that we have tremendous amount of interest in. So it goes in both ways. Unofficial visits, you can do both as many as you want. Unofficial visits, there's no restrictions. You can only do one official visit at each university. So that's something to be mindful of. You can do as many unofficial visits as you want. You should know that rule though. You cannot, prior to August 1 of the junior year, like if you email a coach asking, hey coach, I'm on campus, can I meet you? If they can't, so just know that going into it. Anything after that, you can. I think that's an important one. Talked about the meaning of the official visits. No verbal offers or commitments prior to June 15 after the sophomore year. So you can't verbally commit anywhere. No school can extend an offer until that date. Something pretty recent. What's the NLI, which is the National Letter of Intent. That's how you commit to a school, written offer. Okay, so anything after June 15, if you hear somebody committing in their junior year, that's only a verbal agreement. It's not binding. That doesn't become binding until the senior year when they actually sign a piece of paper, which used to be the NLI. NLI has gone away, and basically now it's just a written offer of athletic aid. So it's basically technically the same thing, it's just being called something different. But in years past, that was always, you could not send that out to a prospect that you want to commit to until November. And I believe moving forward that is still going to apply, at least for men's soccer. So with that being said, I highly recommend, I don't ever recommend to commit to a program and then backing out of that commitment, even if it is verbal, even if it's not binding. You should be 100% sure that that's where you want to go before you actually tell a coach that you're committing to that program, even if you don't put ink to paper. So it reflects poorly on you and it reflects poorly on the club. So be mindful of that if you are in that situation. So no off-campus contact prior to August 1 before the junior year, June 15 for Division 2 after sophomore year for Division 3. So again, I don't know how much you need to like remember these dates and these rules. I don't think you necessarily do. I would just encourage everybody to, again, be proactive, reach out to coaches. Just know that sometimes you can't get the same communication back from them because we're restricted in terms of the rules that NC2A puts on us. So there may be a reason why. If it's after those dates and you're not getting responses, then maybe that's an indication that there's no interest. But again, you should still be persistent regardless. So a little bit of eligibility. There's something called the Eligibility Center. In order to play D1 or D2 NC2A, you need to have an Eligibility Center account. So again, hopefully this is not new information. That's the website. Eligibility Center for NAIA has a different website. You do not need an account for Division 3. The NC2A does two things. One, make sure that you're qualified academically to play. Those are the requirements. I think the requirements and the standards are very low. Hopefully nobody is even in that realm, but it's there, you should know it. I mentioned before, one of the things you should do every year is to go see your counselor at the high school. You should go see your counselor at the high school, make sure you're on track to be what's called a full qualifier. And if you're not, you better get yourself on track. If you're not a full qualifier, then you might fall into this academic redshirt or partial qualifier, which means you can get scholarship, you can train, you just can't play in games. Again, doesn't sound fun to me, but it might happen. Non-qualifier, you can't, you're just not eligible, which is why a lot of people end up at junior college. They're just not eligible to play NC2A. NAIA has different restrictions. Again, I don't think it's super challenging. You guys should get the best grades you possibly get, make sure you're eligible. With that being said, just because you're eligible for NC2A doesn't mean you can get into that school. So every school has their own admission standards. You need to make sure you have, that's why we say have the best grades that you possibly get so that you don't limit yourself in terms of your options. But the other thing NC2A does is make sure you check the box called amateurism. Amateur status, meaning you never had an agent, you never profited from playing the game, you never got a competitive advantage from playing soccer. I would venture to say 99% or 100% of you guys don't necessarily need to worry about that. But the NC2A needs to make sure that anyways that you satisfy that. So that's the two things it does. Last three items. There's something called NC2A clock that you guys should be aware of. At the moment, you are allowed 5 years to play 4 seasons as soon as your clock starts. Okay? You cannot there's certain restrictions in terms of when you can participate. Your clock normally starts once you go full-time at a university. Full-time is 12 units or more. So that's why a lot of people take gap year, and in your gap year, if you want to do a gap year, meaning you're not going to play the year after you graduate from high school, maybe you come back to the club, you play one more season of youth soccer, you build your body physically, you get better. You can go part-time at school, less than 12 units, your clock won't start. That's not going to count against you. Anytime you go 12 units or more, your clock is starting, and you better get those seasons in. There's 2 exceptions to that rule. One, there's medical red shirt, so if you get injured at any point, you can petition and get that back depending on how many games you played. Hopefully that doesn't count against you, so sometimes that's why you see guys getting more than, it looks like they played more than 4 seasons, but some of the years don't count against them. In red, there's something called a PAVIA, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, PAVIA waiver. There's a quarterback from Vanderbilt that recently, a couple months ago, sued the NC2A, basically claiming his seasons at junior college shouldn't count against him because he basically wanted to make NIL money. more money by staying in college through NIL. But his eligibility exhausted, and he basically sued them saying like, I should still have more eligibility, that shouldn't count against me. His last name's Pavia. So, long story short, NC2A granted any athlete at any sport, if they were set to graduate in this academic year, and if they played at least 1 year of non-NC2A, meaning they played junior college or they played NAIA, they got an extra season back. So same concept as COVID, everybody got an extra year because of COVID. Same thing here. Because of this waiver, anybody that's set to graduate this year, there's a low battery, I don't know if it's charging it, that played at least 1 year of junior college. If they play 2, they still only get 1 extra year. They're not granting every year that they played. But if they played non-NC2A, they got an extra year. There's rumors and conversations that people are gonna get multiple years back. That's not the case. There's rumors like people that graduated in prior years would get their eligibility back. That's not the case. It's very specific. With that being said, I don't know. Have been indications or signs that maybe future years junior college would not count against you. I don't know. I don't have the answers for you. Unfortunately, it does affect current seniors. The likelihood of a coach deciding to pick you up versus a guy that's already been in their program that has another year makes it a little bit more challenging. It's one of the challenges that I think the group of current seniors are facing, and that's the reason why. There has been, NC2A is talking about, so the third thing in terms of the clock, there has been conversations about giving student athletes 5 years of competition, 5 years of eligibility, basically based on this premise of giving athletes more time to develop. So that's in the works. I don't know if it's going to pass, but obviously as that information comes in, then that's information that we would pass along to families. So I think all important stuff. Again, that's not thing that anybody here should necessarily stress about, but and as I mentioned, everything, if you have specific schools you're reaching out to or are interested in, then they obviously have their own admission standards that you need to have. They have their own deadlines in terms of when you need to apply and those things. So I'm going to pause there before I get to the heart of what's going on. We'll open up for Q&A after the last 2 slides, which is going to talk about transfer portal and talk about the house settlement. But a lot of information that I covered there, and I just wanted to open up and pause and give myself a chance to breathe and get a drink, but more importantly, give anybody an opportunity to maybe ask questions in relation to eligibility or recruiting rules, different entities, anything like that. Pretty straightforward, nothing necessarily new. There's a couple new things, but hopefully pretty straightforward. Good, all right. Okay, so transfer portal, hopefully this is something that you guys heard about. This is a slide that we used last year, but I updated the numbers. So it's important, I think it's super, super important information that all you guys should be aware of. There's something called transfer portal. The transfer portal exists in NC2A. It basically gives an opportunity for somebody, a prospect, a student athlete at an institution, if they want to transfer to a different institution, nothing is stopping you from doing that. You just have to enter yourself into something called the portal. NC2A recently, it used to be where if you went into the portal, you had to sit a year, meaning you had, wherever you ended up at your next institution, you had to sit a year before you then played. It was not necessarily a punishment, but just didn't give you the benefit of playing right away. That no longer exists. If you transfer and you can get into the school and you're on track to graduate, you still need to be on track to graduate, you can play right away. What has that done? It's basically created a free-for-all. People are jumping left and right. A lot of it is based on NIL, meaning, okay, where can I get more money? The school can offer me more money in NIL, as sad as that sounds. So that exists. Couple of things that you should know. So like we spoke about this last year, what are the reasons why people go into the portal? They want to play at a higher level, they want a better relationship with the coaches, they're not playing a lot, better school academically, their major, closer to home. I said this last year, I mean, this is a lot of stuff that hopefully you've kind of figured out through the recruitment process. You're not figuring out when you get to a place. If you did the process right, you did your research, hopefully a lot of this stuff you would already know. I think most people go into the portal because they're not playing a lot. And I think in relationship to that, Teddy and I talk about this all the time, like a lot of people, like in your first year, you don't play right away, and then that's like, you feel like, okay, well, that's when they immediately jump ship. You need to think about the overall process of developing and committing to a program and see the longevity and big picture of that program. I think a lot of young people are, one, not going through the process well, so they make poor decisions in terms of where they're going, and then, you know, they don't check a lot of these boxes, and then they find out when they get there. That's one. Two, like, you're not supposed to be ready as an 18-year-old. You're not supposed to be better than somebody that's already existed in a program for 2-3 years. It's very challenging. Probably a waiver, now the guy gets, he's been in college, he might be 24, 25 now. Like, it's very hard to be better and be ready, more ready than a 24-year-old that's been in a program. And that's okay, but that doesn't mean that you should jump ship right away. It's just your process. So there's an individual that came from our club, went to a big time program. I'm not gonna say names, I'm not gonna say program, big program. One of the best prospects I've seen come out of our club. He didn't play his freshman year. Stuck with the process. He was starting as technically his freshman year, second year, but he's a freshman still. He didn't lose a year. And now he's starting as a freshman. As an example, it could have been very easy for him to say, I'm just not getting an opportunity, coach doesn't like me, whatever the case may be. But ultimately, the portal exists, and the reason why people go into the portal, you can see here. Up on the upper right is the numbers of the people in men's soccer that have gone into the portal, and as you can see, there's a trend, and the trend is very clear. That number has only gotten bigger. More and more people are going into the portal. More and more people don't want to see their process out, or made poor decisions at the beginning, or whatever the case may be. These graphics are from prior years. They're actually from 2023. But the concept and the notion of what we're trying to get at is the same. And currently in this year, and what I'll mention is there's different times, there's different windows when you can go into the portal. You can't just go in there any time of the year. There's some restrictions based upon it. So on May 1st, the portal is going to open back up again. So right now you see 2,971 people for men's soccer in the portal. When May 1st hits, that number is going to jump. So that trend is going to continue. It looks like, okay, we're going in the right direction. No, that number is going to surpass that 3393 because May 1st is when that next window opens, which is related to the next slide in terms of the house settlement that I'll explain. But out of the 2,971 people currently in the portal, only 612 of them actually matriculated or assigned. Matriculated meaning they found another place and they've already moved to that school, or they signed indicating they're going, they just haven't moved yet. That's, I think I did the math earlier, that's only 20% of the people in the portal, which leaves 80% of the people in the portal without a place to go, which I think is not a place or a position that you want to be in. What is the point of this slide, and why do we educate people on the portal? Is find a good fit, find a place where you feel like you're going to be happy and content, and you're going to commit to the process, you know, for the longevity of your career as a student athlete. Otherwise, you put yourself in a position where you know, you're competing against thousands of other prospects that want the same opportunity as you, and it's only getting harder, which I'll explain in the next slide. So,
Cale, can you explain, so out of the, say 80% of those kids put themselves in the portal, what happens to that 80%? Like I've heard a lot of schools will disregard that athlete as soon as they put their name in the portal. You can't be invited to any more team meetings, play, anything like that.
yeah, it's a great point. What happens? So one, you can't just enter your name in the portal on your own. You have to tell compliance, admin, your coaches are gonna know. You can't just send emails out to other coaches trying to get interest. It doesn't work that way. They're technically not allowed to respond to you. So your coaches are gonna know. So what ends up happening? One, if you're on scholarship, they can take your scholarship away. Two, a lot of them will not allow you to train anymore. They're basically like telling you, something, you know, you're wanting to leave, we're not gonna help you out anymore. A lot of places you'll lose like resources, academic resources. You can't go see tutors. Even if you're not on scholarship, you still have access to resources as a student athlete. Can't use the academic resources anymore. There's a lot of variables to think about in terms of when you get into that situation. And again, it's not a situation you want to be in, you know, because you don't know if you're going to find something. Only out of that percentage, the 20%, a lot of, like, that's what the graphics are. A lot of them, like, in terms of level, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, a lot of them are, it's not a lot of lateral stuff. It's like, you kind of like almost go down in a sense. The guys that are like going this are like, it's a lot of like guys playing mid-major and then getting an opportunity at like a big school. Like all conference guy, has one more year, he's making this kind of like trajectory, this kind of move. If you don't play a lot, like if another school is looking at you, it's like, well, there's obviously a reason why this prospect or this player didn't play a lot. How is that benefiting my program? So again, you get stuck in this limbo. You need to really ask yourself, like, before you even make a decision if that's where you want to go, is this where you want to be? I've heard a lot of guys like, oh, I'm going to go to this school and then I'm going to transfer out. It's very not that simple. It's really challenging. Then you start getting into like units transferring academically. It's very complex. So the point is like find a good fit. This exists because people make bad decisions, and NC2A didn't want to get lost, you know, another lawsuit, and you know, so it's basically giving you the decision-making process. Okay, you felt like you made a bad decision, then you know, here's an opportunity to find a better fit. So that's a little bit about the transfer portal. Again, these are updated numbers. Those numbers are only going to increase as we go. So, question, yes?
Excuse me, just to make sure, that's different from the transfer from junior college, right? That's something different?
Correct. That the junior college athlete does not go into the transfer portal.
Okay, that's two different things, right? The transfer from junior college after the 2 years to a 4-year?
It's different, yes, but what I will say is those guys that go into the portal are now competing against the same guys at junior college that are also trying to get to a 4-year school. So basically, they're all in the portal, essentially. Just the junior college athletes are just not restricted in terms of maybe some of the portal stuff. But now you're into this pool of guys that are trying to find a new place. And not to mention, I said this last year, you know, it's an international sport, soccer, so you're also competing against people around the world that want to play college soccer in America. So it's super challenging in that aspect. But it's a good question. It's not related.
So then the kids out of junior college, then they end up competing also with those kids who were in 4-year college initially and then are making other different choices to go somewhere else?
Competing against other prospects that want to transfer, you're still competing against high school seniors that want to find opportunities. You're competing against international players that I want to come across. Yeah, it's like super competitive, super competitive. Any other questions in relationship to the transfer portal? All right. Okay, last, I think it's the last slide, the fun stuff. So, save this for last. Initially, when we set this date for tonight's meeting, there's something called the NC2A house settlement, which I'll explain in a second, but initially, they were supposed to rule and make a decision today. They delayed the decision, but I'll share with you what I know and why is this important for you guys to know. Another lawsuit, some athlete, a swimmer, sued the NC2A, basically saying like I should have made a lot of money when I was playing college. NIL was not available to me. So you have House versus NC2A. And basically the idea, the premise is that if this passes, which every indication is that it will pass, is schools can now start sharing revenue with student athletes. Where does that revenue come from? It comes from broadcast deals, ticket sales, merchandise, and donations. All this doesn't necessarily apply to you guys. This is really, a lot of this is football and basketball that drive this decision making. There's a lot of money at stake involved in this, but I'll tell you how it affects you guys and why this is important. This is multi-billion. This is like $2.8 billion lawsuit that's been preliminary approved. As of today, no decision has been made. The judge basically came out and said, let me get through this actually. So what about March Madness?
Who can I ask who won March Madness? My bad, I don't watch football.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what just happened. Before, so NIL came into effect in 2021. So anything prior to 2021, that's basically why this lawsuit's come into place. NIL was introduced in 2021, so since 2021, athletes could get compensation, but that was from third parties. That wasn't directly from the school. So they could get third-party money through NIL deals. That's been existing for a little bit, but now basically they're saying like if this passes, schools can now share that revenue. Again, as a men's soccer player, we're talking probably only Division I. We're probably talking like big power schools. But how does it affect you? Well, in the house settlement, the biggest notion that you guys need to be aware of is they're basically changing the roster size number. They're mandating certain roster size numbers. And the flip side of that is they're not limiting scholarships. So in Division I men's soccer, this only applies to Division I. They're going to say all men's soccer programs have to operate, if you opt in, which I'll get into in a second, at 28 roster size, which is a reduction across the board. There's also talking about third-party clearinghouse for marketing deals, which is the NIL stuff. Not a big deal. They're going to back pay college athletes, so 2016 to 24, they got to pay all those athletes. Most of it, again, going to football and basketball, if this passes. In order to be in this 28-man roster, your specific school has to opt in. You have to say, yes, I want to be a part of the settlement. The power conferences are automatically in it. The power conferences are like what you normally see on TV, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC. There will be a salary cap, meaning like schools can only share up to a certain, we're talking millions of dollars. Again, most of this stuff only applies to the bigger schools because those are the schools that generate more revenue. What are the pros? Well, theoretically, more scholarship opportunities. So before, when we went to that first slide, we talked about and it was red, 9.9 for Division I. If this passes, that will no longer exist. You can scholarship every single player on your roster and you can give them all full scholarship. You just need to be able to afford to do so. but you're no longer limited. Before it was 9.9, everything was what's called equivalency, meaning you can get partial scholarships. I can pay for your books. If this passes, you'll still be equivalency, meaning like you can still give percentages, 25, 50, 75, 100%, but you can cover everybody. If you have the means to, you can cover everybody. Sounds great, because it gives you this financial accessibility. The negative, the con of it is, well, they're cutting the roster size. So that means less opportunities for like walk-on guys. And now this entire world of recruiting has gotten to be extremely complex.
Sorry. Quick question. Any update on the skate park down the street?
What is going on, dude?
Just to have to.
Huh? All right.
Oh, California. It's literally such a blessing to be born.
Okay. Apologies. I don't know what happened.
Talking about, like, I think, of that, if you go to a powerhouse school, say you go, like an example would be, guys, if you go to an ACC school, say Clemson University, listen up, you go to a Clemson University that has a big time football program and their cap is 20.5 million, 75% of that 20.5 million is taken by football. So 75% of that is gone, which then goes to probably what? After football? Probably basketball, then baseball, and then soccer is literally probably one of the least amounts. So, and that's spread out amongst a lot of sports. So say maybe 3% is left off the 20 million, 5% is spread out, water polo, volleyball, soccer, if you have a big time men's soccer program, football program. Now, on the flip side, you go to a University of, let's say Portland, is that a good example, Kev? University of Portland, private school, doesn't have football. Their biggest sport is probably basketball and soccer, probably. So again, now they go out and spend, they could start to recruit and give kids a lot more money than say a program would if they had football. Does that make sense? Right?
What is Teddy trying to say? Like every school is, they're gonna be able to decide how they want to share that revenue. That's their decision in terms of how they allocate that. Obviously, schools with football and basketball are generating a lot of revenue at the power schools. This is, I mean, we're talking men's soccer. We're talking very, very few that are going to be in this position. But ultimately, it has a trickle-down effect, and this is why we're discussing it. If this passes and everybody goes, you can opt out. So, as an example, the Ivy League schools, they all opted out. They don't have to operate under this, under these rules. If you decide to opt out, you don't have to go to 28 roster. You're still restricted to the 9.9 as an example. The Ivy League is very different. Ivy League is one of two conferences that also decided not to play during COVID, so it's not a surprise that they are doing this. But so at some point we'll all know, like, okay, who opted in, who opted out, who's operating at 28. The concern and the challenging part is like, okay, what happens to all those guys on the roster to get to that number of 28? Because a lot of people are operating at a higher number than 28. And I can tell you that a majority of schools in Division I have all operated under this assumption. If this passes, that it should pass, that it will start this coming fall. So people have already planned to be at this number of 28 players. I was at the field this recently. I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody told me that the school that I'm familiar with already cut 14 individuals from their roster. Knowing that they needed to get to 28, you also have to consider like anybody that they already committed to prior as another transfer or as a high school senior. What happens to all those guys? Well, they're going to end up in the portal, which is going to increase that number. As soon as this passes, if it passes, I don't know if it will, but everything indication is it will. And that May 1st date comes around, that number is going to go up, which again has a trickle down effect on more opportunities at Division I, and then it goes all the way down. So what's to come with this? Probably more lawsuits. How do people enforce people following the issues? Are athletes going to become employees? We've already seen like there's some Division I schools that have decided to reclassify. What is reclassified? Like St. Francis decided they don't want to deal with this. They're going to go from Division I and they're going to go to Division III. Here in California, you've already seen a couple programs, unfortunately, in men's soccer, and not just men's soccer, but sometimes the entire athletic department, they cut athletics. Academy of the Arts, Sonoma State, as two examples of schools that cut men's soccer or cut athletics generally. That's one less program, two less programs as an example of opportunities. Azusa Pacific also in our backyard, reclassifying, going from Division II to Division III, starting not this fall, but the following fall. So there's going to be more coming. How are schools dealing with this? They're reclassifying, they're going to increase ticket prices because they need to generate revenue. If you want to remain competitive, some schools are trying to pass tuition fees, basically charging students fees for athletics so that they can basically be competitive. If you're opting in, you're deciding basically, I want to be competitive. But again, the notion that, what do you need to take away? It's going to be super, it's already challenging. It's going to get even harder to play at the highest level in college soccer in NC2A. With that being said, like, I don't think that your process should change. You shouldn't look at it like, oh, they're operating at 28, I shouldn't reach out to that school. No, you should still go through the process. Nothing changes in that regard. You just need to know that it's just going to get a little bit harder. It's very limited at the highest level, which again will affect programs as we go kind of down the list. So you need to be even more proactive, you need to be more engaged, you need to be industrious in terms of your recruitment process to really figure out a place that's best for you, a good fit for you. If you just put your eyes on the biggest programs in the country, you might not get the results that you want, which is what Teddy was speaking about earlier. That does not mean, I think people are concerned like, oh, there's not opportunities for me, or there's not opportunities for my son. There's opportunities, it just may not be at your dream school. You may need to expand your range of interests and figure out a place that may be a fit. I don't think Dominguez Hills and Rose-Hulman were your dream schools when you guys started. Am I wrong? I'm not saying that statement.
Correct.
No, but they went through the process, and the process got to them a place where they made decisions based upon the schools that they chose, and if they stick with the process and enjoy their process while they're there, I'm sure they'll enjoy their time there as well, based upon all the decisions, because I know that they went through the process well. And one of the biggest reasons why we brought them in here for them to speak to you is so that you guys can think about the process the same and learn from their processes and do your own process well, which is ultimately what needs to happen if you want to get good results. So there is plenty of opportunities. I was at the field this weekend for the ECNL RL event. A lot of people asking me about players in the club. Like it still exists. Like it's just a little bit more challenging, and you got to do a little bit more work to get there. So, But nothing has changed. You should be aware though of the information. As things start to develop and decisions are made, then obviously that's information that we'll share with the club because it does affect, this is happening in all sports, by the way. This is not just men's soccer, but we are men's soccer athletes, so we're focusing on those numbers. So pause there. Any questions in relationship to the house settlement? Basically, what's the judge basically said today, not going to make any decisions, but everything is leaning toward making a decision. The judge said two things. She wants changes made in relationship to roster limits, meaning she would rather that be phased in. So it may not go directly to 28 starting this fall. That's what the judge is proposing. We'll see what happens. It may be phased in a little bit slower than just like making this happen. So that's one aspect. And then there's language on like how this affects future athletes. The judge said she wanted that changed. That's the two things that are holding the decision up. Fun stuff, I know, but anyway, I'm sure everybody heard about it. It's in the news. It's pretty big, but anything in relationship or questions in regards to just the house settlement, or obviously we're at the Q&A portion, 7:34, so we're doing okay on time. I know it's been a long evening as well, but any questions on the house settlement or just general stuff? And I know that a lot of you guys submitted questions. Hopefully some of the stuff was answered. I will go back through the questions, and if I didn't answer anything in particular, I'm happy to do that now. I'm happy to do that at a later point. But I want to make sure you guys have as much information as possible. And we'll continue to keep you guys updated as we go along as well. So, floor is open.
I have a question. Have you ever experienced where like college coaches will reach out to the club and say, hey, I know this kid hasn't, or this position hasn't reached out to me, but do you have any players in, say, like a center back, that you would recommend to come out and, maybe come out for my school because that's what we're looking for?
All the time.
Oh, you do? Okay.
All the time, yeah. Normally it happens around like some of the showcase events and stuff like that. But yes, I mean, Teddy has a wide range of connections, as do myself. Matt's just getting into it and he's gonna keep building his network, so it's part of the benefit of having college coaches in the club, so yes, it does happen pretty frequently, so.
Maybe express before the showcases what you do for the college showcase, or
Yeah, like
send it out.
with the showcases in specific, like you need to, as Tiago and Ben mentioned, like you need to be proactive, you need to send emails out, not the night before. Normally, most of the showcases provide a list of schools that are attending. I always recommend, like, sometimes people don't register for that list. I try not to because I get bombarded with emails and I just, but it's recommended that, you reach out if you are attending the event, here's my schedule and that sort of thing. So, there's some work prior that needs to be done. They mentioned like following up after as well. Again, you're trying to be persistent and you don't want to be I've had certain prospects, like it becomes too much, you don't want to be that individual, but you want to, it's their life, they could have sat back and just hoped something happened, but clearly they have to work at it, so that's what every young man in here has to do as well. There's very, very few guys that are just that talented, Don't get me wrong, so like going back to the portal and stuff like that, talent doesn't have an age. Like if you're good, you're good. It doesn't matter. There's still opportunities for good 17, 18-year-old players as well. It's not just like, okay, everybody's focusing on transfer portal or junior college or Pavia waiver or anything like that. You know, good players are good players. If you can find a good player, it doesn't matter how old they are. So yes, that does happen, but there's also work that the individual needs to do to get to the place. A lot of times what happens is like an individual will send that email and then that coach is like, hey, so-and-so contacted me, tell me a little bit about like them. And then they'll start asking other questions about the team as well, which sometimes opens up opportunities for other guys as well. So.
I think part of it too is prior to the showcase, you'll get coaches that are going to attend that will reach out to us and say, hey, what you just said, you know, we're looking for a specific position. And then we let them know these are the individuals that are in that position. A lot of times, and I go back and forth on this, sometimes I won't tell that player the coach is actually coming to watch them play because it tends to backfire because they get nervous when they know that that specific coach is coming to watch them. So I kind of just let it go and, you know, don't say exactly that he's coming to watch you because they already got enough pressure on it anyway. When they get there, they feel the pressure. I know kids, they feel like that. But prior to that showcase, Cale also, our play matrix that has all the profiles on it, he sends them to all the coaches that are attending prior. On top of that, now that I don't coach a specific team, I go now I hand out the college pamphlets to the coaches because a lot of times you'll see other clubs, and I saw it this weekend, it's a lot of like managers, parents that actually pass them out that have no idea about any of the kids, just their own. If it's usually their own kid they'll talk about. But now it gives me an opportunity to hand these out to individual coaches. Hey, who are you interested in? Who are you looking at? And if they have anything to say or ask, then I can respond. It's pretty easy after that. So that's another benefit of us, you know, setting this stuff out early, but also staying active with the coaches. And then after the game, I might send a text to one of them and say, hey, this coach came and saw you play, you did a real good job, you know, something like that. So that's a kind of the process, you know, how leading up to it. And again, going back to this point about schools will register for the showcase, but like you said, not all of them do. You know, we went to South Carolina, like they said, they get inundated with emails because they say, oh, UCI's coming, and he gets like 1,000 emails. Sometimes a lot of the bigger schools, they won't even say they're registering, but they're there because of that reason.
I do have another follow-up on that one, sorry.
Sure.
So say a college coach does come to watch your child and they've seen your videos and everything, but you just don't perform that game, or you play bad, or you don't play a lot of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend to do after that?
Still contact them. It's not, I mean, I normally talk to them as well. You know, they're not going to just watch one game. I mean, Cale can respond to that. It's like, it's one game. They're not going to put everything on that one game. But as a coach.
Yeah, look, you want as many, what I call touch points as possible. Sometimes they play well, sometimes they don't. That's why you need to see them as many times. That's why there's conversations with coaches in terms of overall development and where they see them. So there's a lot of work as a coach that goes into the process, but as these guys mentioned, like, if you're considering like schools on the East Coast and stuff, like, you're a little bit more limited with the touch points. So you need to take advantage of every opportunity you have, and you might need to invest into an ID camp if you really want to get more of a touch point with that certain university or staff. I think the ID camps are good because it's the only opportunity where you can actually work with the staff. Going back to my point about ID camps, you don't get to do that anywhere else. So I think you learn a lot about the staff, and so that's why I recommend it. But I also say, like, you should only do that for your top options. Otherwise, it does become costly. So yeah, look, Ben also mentioned, like, Pats is a big club, it's a big name, so that's extremely helpful. This past weekend, within like an hour, not even, probably within 30 minutes of me sending out rosters, I got a phone call and a text from some school called Stanford and some school called UCLA, like just asking questions, like, so pretty cool, I think. So people are watching, people know our club, you know, but as a player, they need to do a lot of the heavy lifting, you know, so. Yes, Deb?
If a coach contacts me and like lets me know if they're gonna come to one of my games, should I notify you guys or?
Yeah, it's good practice. It's good practice. I mean, you don't want to present it like, coach, you know, so and so is coming to watch. I need to play 90 minutes. It doesn't work that way, but it's good to let them know. You know, just it's just it's good practice. So
I think another question would be, how long do these coaches actually stay and watch a game, right? The goalkeepers tend to have a little bit more of an advantage because we could say, hey, we need to, or if Dominguez is coming watching me, it's like, okay, you're going to play the first half and you're at a showcase. Well, he's there to watch 20, 30 other kids that have emailed him as well. But if a goalkeeper is a little more specific, a player tends to be a little bit more of a variable, right? A lot of coaches, when they go to watch a game, they're not going to go watch Devin for 90 minutes, right? It's just the way it goes recruiting wise. They might go watch 20, 30 minutes or maybe a half, I think would be at most maybe. But I'll let you, because I'm not a college coach. So.
To be honest, I can sometimes make decisions within like 2-3 minutes. It's that easy. Other times I'll stay a little bit longer. Depends on how the game's going and certain things. But I don't know. The best advice I can give, the best advice I've given to people in the past is like, you need to train every day and play every game as if everybody's watching you. Like that's the best way to approach it. You never know who's watching. You need to approach even your training sessions as if somebody's watching, because somebody may be watching, and that may be your one opportunity. That may be, if that's the one half you get. Ben talked about it, like he had to take advantage of the showcases because that was more of his opportunity. You need to take advantage of it. You need to perform and perform well. Like, talent is important. Talent, you need to be good. You need to be a good player. Like, besides being a good student and good person, as Thiago said, all those are important, but you gotta be a good player, So, I want good people, I want good students, but I want guys that are gonna help me win games. That's kind of the job description.
And we tend to hit the bigger showcases, right? Because that's where all the college coaches are. So if you're going to be an 09 going into this next season, like playoffs is massive. I think playoffs is a big one because there's a lot of college coaches there. But like 09s, this next season is big for them as well because that's June 15th. That's when they can start contacting coaches. But in terms of show, we're a club that, we're not going to go to Irvine Strikers Classic, for a tournament. We go to Surf Cup. We go to the South Carolina event, which is probably one of the biggest ones in the country. Arizona. So we try to hit the most where the players are going to get the most visibility, right? That's the biggest one.
Other questions?
We'll send this out. So
What's that?
we'll send it out. We'll send it.
Look, as a reminder, we'll send this out. You have opportunities to follow up. There's no restrictions in terms of the amount of times you can reach out to myself. I'm always available, cell or email. I try to get back to people right away. So please don't hesitate. If there's a question that you submitted that it didn't answer, please follow up. There'll be more education to come along the way. Hopefully you don't have questions because you've got a lot of good information and things were covered either today or in the past. Hopefully people got new information based upon today. If anything, I got to put myself in front of some new faces, which is important. But I'm here to help. The club is here to help. Teddy's here to help. Matt's here to help. We want to help because that's our passion. You guys as individuals and as parents entrust our club to look after your sons, and we want to put everything we can into giving them the best opportunities. So, I think the club has done an excellent job of helping place players, and we'll continue to try to do that. I will say, like, if you want to tell me, like, Coach, can you call Stanford for me? Like, I'm just not gonna. It doesn't necessarily work that way, but I'll help as best as I can, advise and poke around and see if that maybe makes sense or not. So anything that you need in terms of college related, these guys, I had a relationship with them both, so they kind of knew me. And they weren't afraid to ask questions when they needed. They didn't bombard me, but when they needed help, they asked me, which I think was good. And hopefully they felt like we helped, and Teddy helped, and Matt helped. So that's what we're here for. So please don't hesitate. But we'll send this all out. I'll stay for like 5 more minutes if anybody has like any questions they want to ask in person. But we appreciate your guys' time. I know it was long. I know there was some weird interruptions, but we got through it. And if anything, you guys got a night off from training, which is good. So last thing you guys should just take away, if you players, give you one thing to summarize. Any player in the room, summarize one thing that you can take away from the night. A little engagement from some of the young men. One thing you can take away. Yes, Jude.
The top division ones have 28 full scholarships. The 28 players.
That's what you take away. Okay. All right. So what does that mean, though? What does that mean?
It depends how much the coach can give each player a certain amount of money. If they don't want to give them a full scholarship, they can give them 50%.
Should you not look at those schools then if they're operating as failure?
No.
That's what you need to take away. Still be persistent, still pursue your dreams, but keep your options as open as possible. Good. What else? Anybody else can take something away. Otherwise you just sat there and, wasted an evening. Missed the basketball game apparently, which I don't know. Clayton.
Then if you take a JUCO route and you decide to go bigger college, you can do the Pavia waiver and you can get retained an extra year.
No. Maybe, but no. You would need to graduate this year. You would need to be a senior and graduate this year. Maybe in the future, you might, but as of today, no. As of today, you play JHC, you're going to burn those years. It's a good question. I'm glad I put that out so I can clarify a little bit. So, don't want to put that information out. Anything else? Nodding.
It's important to be patient because it's competitive for everyone, not just yourself. And I would say it's easy to get frustrated, but it's important to stay focused on your goal and not get too impatient when the schools don't reciprocate in the same interest.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Anybody else have anything to add? Based upon that, be persistent, find a good fit, okay? Own your process, okay? Be proactive. Don't let your parents do the process for you, okay? Let them help you, but don't let your parents do the process, okay? You guys need to own the process, but find a good fit. That's what I can share with you guys. And the number one thing, and I'll leave you with this, because I said it, talent is important. While you're getting good grades, hopefully, and being the best student you can possibly get, you also need to keep getting better as a soccer player. So train every day like somebody's watching, and if that's what motivates you to get better, then great. If it's something else, then great. Otherwise, why are you playing? You should train and play to get better every day, so that hopefully you can reach your goals of playing at a college somewhere. So, and by the way, when you get there, you still need to keep getting better. So, even when you found a place, like they're gonna step foot on the first day of training, and they gotta compete against 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds for playing time. So, now the process starts all over again. But you should enjoy that process. So, cool. All right. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.